What is happening, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Austin, host of the One Last Hit podcast. And I'm sitting down with Dallas today. Dallas, what's up, bud?
What's up, Austin? How you doing?
Man, I'm good. I'm so stoked to get into your story. I've heard pieces of it, and I know there's some shit that happened. And I'm excited to get into the details, bro. So, all right, where did you grow up? What was early life like for you?
Well, what I can remember is just growing up necessarily with my mom. My dad and my mom kind of met. My dad was a rock star, drummer, played for JP Fires. My uncle was, him and my uncle were both in a band. They toured the States. And my mom met him on the road. He'd set her next to the drum set, play for her. He was selling drugs, she was doing drugs, and they just had a wild life. And from that came me. And but they split up really early. And I just remember just growing up with my mom. Really, just it's just a rough life. You know what I mean? There was no sunshine and rainbows at all, from the story.
Did you know your dad? Did you have a relationship with him? Oh, okay.
Super close. My dad was my best friend.
Okay. Was he in your life like your whole growing up, or how did that look?
Yeah. He's the one that got me out of the system. When I was around 7 years old, I got put in Orangewood. They found my mother to be not competent to have me as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
They found me with like belt marks, her using, you know what I mean? Nobody watching me. So they put me in the system. And then after they moved me from Orangewood to Child Help in Beaumont. And I stayed there in a group home for about 3 to 4 years. And my dad had to come, every weekend to come visit me from LA, from the Valley. And, he did everything he could for the courts, passed all the drug tests, finally got me out. And my mom would come and visit. And she found a way to pretty much tell the courts that my dad wasn't fit. And so they took me back, put me into foster care. And went to 3 foster homes, East LA, then Long Beach. Then I went to a foster home in Gardena. I went to school in Inglewood, Slauson Middle School. Same school that Tyrese went to. And that was fun. Stayed there for about a year or two, and then moved in with my dad.
So you started life is that in Texas, Beaumont, Texas?
No, Beaumont, California.
Beaumont, California. I didn't even know there was a Beaumont, California. All right. Yeah. So there I go, assuming shit. So Beaumont, California. What's Orangewood? Is that like a child protective? Is that like a home, or what is that?
It's over there by the plant. It's over by Theo Lacey in Orange County, by the county jails, where they put the kids that don't have homes. It's a group home, necessarily. You have 2 spots that you can go to as a kid. Well, 3 spots actually. You can go to either group homes or foster homes. So that's what social services usually does. And then through those avenues, usually you mature and you end up going to juvenile hall. That's the graduation.
Yeah. When they took you from mom and you said you had belt marks on you, did they take you because she was abusive or take you because she was addicted?
Both. Multiple. So I'm not too sure. I just remember that they came, they found me, the cops came to my house. There was a guy and a girl. They said, "Who would you like to look at your," you know what I mean, to pretty much for you to expose yourself to, because they had to look at my ass,
Mm-hmm.
And I picked the guy, and he came through. And then after that, all I know is that I was on a trip to Orangewood. Yeah.
6 years old. I have a 6-year-old daughter who is like and you have kids. I know you have kids, right? So my 6-year-old is like my shadow. Like, she is on me, and I can't even imagine her going through something like that.
Yeah, and I had my 2 little brothers at the time too, Christopher and Adrian, with me, and I used to have to watch over them in the back of the car while she'd be driving around, copping drugs or going wherever she was going, And we all got. So I got put in the system, and then my 2 little brothers got put up for adoption. After I got taken away, she kept Christopher and Adrian, but ended up giving away for adoption. And on the grounds that they couldn't reach her, you know. And just recently, right before I got out, my little brother Adrian had actually found me after my mom passed away when I was in Arizona, and threw some records and reached out to my family and actually sent me a letter, you know, which is crazy. You know, she died, and then he finally got it in to find his family.
How long had it been since you talked to him?
How old was I? Like 30, 31, so about 16, 15 years, something like that, you know. Since I was 6, so, you know,
I don't know, 25
years, 24 or 5 years. Yeah. Trying to do the math.
Okay. All right. So you go to live in California. You eventually get out of the system and go to live with your dad, you said?
Yeah, when I got out of the system, because my dad was coming to see me like every weekend. You know what I mean? Like when my mom couldn't even come to see me, I'd hit him up and I'd be like, hey, man, like, you know, those weekend visits were like the highlight, you know? It's like you're pretty much locked up as a kid. There ain't nothing to do, you know? And you see some kids go out and see their family and, you know, you're just sitting there by yourself on the weekend with nothing to do. There's no program on the weekend. So, you know, but he'd come and see me at a drop of a dime, you know? He wasn't the best parent, but he was one of my best friends, you know, and that's the best that he knew to do, you know. Mm-hmm. But he did get, you know, finally got the courts to convince them to let me go with him, you know, and he did the best he could, you know, as a struggling alcoholic trying to find his way, you know. We always had like, you know, we didn't have full pantries and full refrigerators, but you know, I was able to make it to school. I had clothes on my back, you know, mm-hmm. And we had a lot of good time together.
So what was middle school like for you? You had mentioned where you went to middle school.
Middle school. Yeah. Middle school. I was, well, when I got out, after I got out of Gardena, my dad got me back in and we were living in the Valley. Mm-hmm. And he had tried to put me into a couple schools, into public schools. Like I went to Bancroft Middle School, and acclimating to that was really hard for me. You know, as a kid, I was really shy. I was very antisocial. It's hard to put it, but you know, it was just such a big school, you know, and your classes were here. I couldn't find classes, so I was ditching without even knowing it. And I was so tired. I'd stay up all night and I'd get into school and I'd just be sleeping on the desk. The teacher would wake me up, and instead of just staying there, I just leave the class because I'd be embarrassed. And I had some friends that I had to run around the campus with, and I just pretty much just AWOL the whole day, just, you know, on site. And ended up, I'd been going there for a little bit, and I ended up getting into a fight in the gym during like the time where you're supposed to like undress and change your clothes and go work out or whatever. And this little essay jumped me, and I ended up stabbing him with like a little one of those little pocket knives, you know, that you get from your dad mm-hmm. with the nail thing. And I thought it was pretty cool. And so they took me, and I would have went to juvenile hall or got locked up, but the knife wasn't bigger than your hand. That's what the principal told me. She was like, "You're lucky the knife isn't bigger than my hand, or else you'd be getting locked up right now." And it's not like I really did that much damage to the kid. You know, it's not like some grotesque scene, but you know, it was all out of fear. You know, I realized now, like looking back on my life, like everything I did was just out of fear. You know, I had to be accepted, or, you know, it's not like, it's just the trying to be the tough guy, because I always thought that was like the cool guy, you know?
Mm-hmm. When did you start putting drugs and alcohol in your body?
Man, late.
Okay.
I drank my first beer at my mom's house. She had one of her boyfriends, which was like Adrian or Christopher's dad. And I remember trying it and thinking like how nasty it was, you know? But it wasn't until like I was, 14, 15, so I smoked weed and started drinking. You know what I mean? I remember smoking weed for the first time. About the middle school thing. So I got kicked out of LAUSD when I was a kid. They wouldn't accept me. So I had to find like private continuation schools. And I remember my dad, we'd go to schools. I remember there was a school in the Valley that I went to go try out at. And the first day there, you know, they kind of like put you in like a fish, like you put a fish into a fish tank in the bag. I was pretty much in a bag, and I ended up getting into a fight with another fish on the basketball court. So my dad had come see me, and he was like, bro, like, you have to go to school. You got to like be cool for one of these schools. And they ended up putting me in a place called New School on Victory and Coldwater across the street from Grant. And it was cool, man. It was cool. Just a bunch of fuck ups, you know, and you just run around and just smoke cigarettes. And there was a guy there. I remember I met him, and you know, you sit out front trying to kick it with all the older kids, trying to be cool. I remember he took me for a walk one time and smoked a blunt with me. And I remember coming back to class, just like feeling the inside of my body moving, just feeling like, oh man, this is just like head down. My high school teacher, he already knew. He was like, oh man, Dallas, you know. And but yeah, I did most of my, I really found that there, you know. And I'd go to like Ralph's and I'd just steal alcohol. It was just so easy, you know. So if I didn't have money, you know, I had an allowance of $20 my dad would give me. And if I used that, what I would do is I'd go in front of Whole Foods and I'd panhandle like a little poor kid, you know, and I'd get enough money, you know. Luckily, I'd get some guy who would be like, "Oh man, here's $20," and I'm like, "Oh man!" And I'd take the bus and I'd go down and I'd take my little 20 and I'd take it to the weed guy and I'd say, "Hey man, you know," and I'd get a gram. That was back when a gram was $20, you know.
Yeah.
And you know,
the good shit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd smoke with my friends, you know, but most of the time I was just like, you know, I'd find friends that had it, you know. If you didn't have it, like, what was the point of us being friends?
Dude, I love so much that you said, oh, I started late. You know, I was 14. I thought you were going to say like, you know, you didn't take a drink till after high school or something. You know, I guess in our circle that is late though, isn't it?
It's pretty late, you know. Like I didn't lose my virginity till I was like 15, 16. I didn't start drinking and smoking weed till I was like 14, 15. Like, and you hear stories of guys that are like, oh, I was doing that with my dad when I was 7 years old. And you're like, dang, I thought I had a rough life, you know, like you had the good stuff from the early on, you know. I didn't get the solution. I didn't find the solution till I was 14, 15.
Man. All right. So we've got, you're at the new school, you're smoking blunts with the older kids, trying to be cool, getting in fights, stabbed a kid in middle school.
That was earlier.
That was the other one, but we're building a resume here, man. So, all right. So where do we go from here? Where do we go
from here, man? We go from, well, they moved our school up into Van Nuys. You know, my school, they had to they would bus us in. And so you would bus in and there'd be a fence that would open up and they'd bus you in and the fence would close. And then there'd be another fence that opened up and they'd fucking drop you off right in front of your class. And I remember being there, you know, and it wasn't really school, you know. You didn't really learn much. You know, school wasn't really hard for me, you know. Class wasn't like hard. It was kind of like just there to play sports, you know, to play dominoes, spades, and you know, get into fights. And you know, at that time, you know, I was really kind of just isolated. You know, I never really felt like I fit in, you know, but I really tried hard to, you know. It's like I tried to be a tough guy, but there was times where, you know, I got punked and I you know, I always like, it always hurt, you know, like, fuck, I should have took off on that guy, you know. But you know, you get in those situations and it is what it is, you know. I don't hold it against myself anymore, you know. But you know, it definitely did push me to extremes, you know, to find that solution. And so got caught up. And you know, it's funny is at that time when I was 16, my dad was dating a girl, Lisa Blankfield. And you know, I grew up in the program. My dad was always in the program. You know, I used to run the bases at Clancy's house on Sunday, you know, going on to the PG meetings, and everybody kind of knew me. And I remember one time, you know, I kept getting in trouble, and my stepmom was like, "Hey, you should go to this place. It's a party, you know, it's a party spot." And I said, "Oh, okay, cool." And I remember I got some weed because I could never go to parties without drugs or alcohol because I always felt like I had to be needed, right? I was awkward if I didn't have people going, "Oh, you're the drug guy," or "You got this," right? And I remember showing up with a gram of some weed. And she dropped me off in the back, and it was Radford Hall, you know. a 12-step program. And but it was a young people's meeting. And you know, tell you the truth, man, I got in this program and I got sober based on the fact that you know, it was really like a cool, it was like a cool fellowship, you know, in the sense of like I didn't have nobody, and there were a bunch of these little valley kids and just people of all whatever, you know. And you know, I got in, I remember hitting on some chick and she was like, "How much time you got?" And I was like, "Oh, I got like 12 days or something like that." She was like, "Get at me when you have a year." And so in my mind, I thought, oh, okay, so, you know, that the more time I got, the more action I can get. And I said, okay. And you know what happened was I ended up just finding a group of people, and you know, they were all sober, and I ended up getting sober just based off of fellowship. And you know, just hanging
How old
out
were
with
you
them.
at this time?
At that time I was around, like, it was right before I turned 17.
Okay. And then,
Right
you
before I
know,
turned
just
17.
sidebar, I was, and I wasn't ready to be sober yet, but I was sober for a little while out in Santa Monica. And the feeling I got from 12-step meetings on the West Coast was like, it's hard to really put into words. It really is a party though. It's like,
it is
happy
it
to be
is
sober, you know?
It's like you hear these stories about people saying, "Oh, like I didn't want to go in the program because it was just a bunch of old farts." And like we had like old timers, but like, you know, it's hard to explain because you don't want to say like, "Oh, it's cool to be in the program," but in the Valley and in SoCal, like it's not cool. You know,
Yeah.
it's not boring. Like you have fun. Like there are people that are like, you know how they say like, "Oh, these are the types of people I wouldn't hang out with outside of these rooms." Like, no, these are the people that I would hang out with outside of these rooms, you know? And you find, you know, you got certain programs where you go to go experience what it's like to be on a prison yard. And then you got certain programs to go to where you get to experience what it's like to be chic and cool, whatever. And then, you know, you got different areas too, you know, like you had, you know, Hollywood had like kind of like a, you know, Westwood, they had like a kind of like a vibe to it, you know, and you just had to find your place, you know. And and when I was sober, I found my place everywhere. There wasn't a meeting that I went to that people didn't know me, that I didn't feel belonged. And it was like, you know, that was amazing for me because I always wanted to feel a connection that I couldn't find before I found the program, you know.
Yes. So question for you, and I am curious about this. So growing up, I mean, you really, at least in your formative years, you really grew up, even when you were with your mom, probably with no real parental guidance, right? Because she was drinking, using, just kind of out with it.
Yeah, at that time, you know, my guidance was being locked in a room and getting beat on, you know, like stuck in a room for days at a time, you know. Long enough for me to want to jump out of a 2-story window to try to get out and go play around, you know.
Yeah. And so no surprise that, you know, the love you found in the rooms, at least, and it was the same for me, right? Like I got in here and it was finally like, oh my God, this is everything I've been trying to find everywhere else. So you're 17, you know, the girl says she's going to bang you if you get a year. Did you get a year?
I got 3.5 years.
Just going to meetings.
Just going to meetings. I you know, I did the steps. You know, I got a sponsor. You know, he's dead now. Rest in peace. It's funny. He actually dated my wife's sister after I got locked up. But you know, I found the guy. You know, they say find the guy who has what you want, and the guy was super cool, man, and he got tons of pussy. You know, and that's really all I wanted. You know, like I was a kid, that's all I cared about. Like I wasn't even tripping on money. You know what I mean? I was a rover. I was a vagabond. Like I just latched on to some of these people and I stayed the night at their house. We'd hit meetings and, you know, my life would just revolve around meetings. And I had a job with a guy I sold detox products with. Ended up like, I wasn't really good at sales. I was so bad at sales. I was so shy. I couldn't really I had no voice. I was really like just low monotone, which I still am to this day. You know, they make fun of me for mumbling, but, yeah. You know, I was doing warehouse management for him, getting paid like, you know, $100, $60, $70 a day. And the good thing about that job was like, I didn't even have to be there. Like there was some days we just take off. So like, but before that job, I had nothing, you know? And, Yeah, man, the program was fun, bro. It was just free, like you just all the
Mm-hmm.
everybody was kind of just fucking and having fun and like everybody staying sober, mind you. There was like people that were getting it, but my way of doing the steps was like I did the steps and then I got to the 4 and then I ended up skipping everything and doing my own 9 steps from my understanding. Like I read the book and whatnot. So I had these ideas of like, there would be guys that like I really didn't like. I have a problem with I'm real sensitive, especially when I was in the new in the program. I thought these guys were disrespecting me. So I had to, I was bothered by it and I realized, all right, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make an amends. So instead of fighting this dude, because I know, politically that wouldn't have worked out. It probably ostracized me. So I went up to him outside of Ohio Street, took him aside, and he was like, "Oh, what's going on?" I said, "Hey, man, I just want to make an amends. I just want to say sorry because, like, for the last week, I've just been thinking about beating your ass, and that's wrong of me. That's not cool. And I just want you to know that I feel bad about that. So in my mind, I'm being spiritual, but at the same time, I'm letting this guy know, like, hey, like." This is where you're at in my eyes, and it wasn't like that's when you tell people don't do the steps on your own, right?
Right.
Don't skip. And my sponsor, he didn't really like push on me to do the steps. Like he was just like it's funny because afterwards after I got locked up, he turned into like a life coach,
Oh wow.
and he turned into a life coach and he was like pretty much getting paid by parents to like help people in the program or whatnot, which is funny because, we spoke about this the other day, people getting paid, and that's against our traditions, which is the funniest thing, but leave it to California to break tradition,
My second wife was a sober coach. She used to sober coach with, musicians, I won't mention any names, but yeah,
I like that.
It was also, I've had 3. Yes. I'm currently married to wife number 2. Wife number 2 went to Mexico with me and got deported back to the United States. That's what was sober. Anyhow, I digress. So, all right. So you managed to stay sober 3.5 years, but obviously your story takes off kind of after that, right?
Pretty fast, pretty fast. After 3.5 years, when I first got in, I'm the kind of guy that like, if I'm doing something, like I'm always, I guess, like Bub says all the time, I'm always selling, I'm always pitching. And I guess that's always been the way. Cause I remember when I first got sober, I tried to get my other friends to get sober too. I said, hey bro, like you got to be involved, man. This is cool, man. There's like a whole honeypot here of just, and they got sober. And then after about 3.5 years, I think what happened was I got resentment again in the rooms, probably a couple of them, some that were just like growing. And then I was just kind of collecting them to the point where it was just like, what am I doing here kind of thing? Or it was awkward for me to go back to the rooms, which is why they say it's the number 1 offender. And I called up one of my buddies and we were taking 240 to Hollywood. And he pretty much told me that he wasn't sober. And I said, bro, when were you going to tell me? He's like, well, look, me and Eric were going to tell you. We just knew it was so important to you that we just didn't really want to tell you, because we knew that you took it serious, And I was like, well, what have you guys been doing? He goes, well, hey, man, we've just been whatever, He goes, hey, babe, you heard about salvia? I said, no. He goes, well, man, they sell it at shops on the street and it gets you high. And I said, it's legal? And he's like, yeah. And I said, let's go to Hollywood. Let's try it out. And, we took the bus down to Hollywood, and then we're over there by where I used to do community service at the Hollywood beautification team over there for Colorado and not Sunset, but Hollywood Boulevard, and went back into one of the streets, and we got a little one-hit pipe, and we smoked it. And I remember holding it and then just laughing uncontrollably for like 2 minutes, and then it was gone. And I remember going, and I was kind of like just, like high from like a stress high. And then I went back home and I remember telling my dad about it. He's like, that's not a relapse. And I remember calling my sponsor. I was outside in the back of Radford Hall and I said, hey man, I did some salvia and I was just trying to figure out, is that a relapse? And he goes, did you do it to get high? And I said, yep. And then he goes, then that's a relapse. And I remember standing back. I said, well, here we go,
Yep.
And what got me sober was I was in Palmdale and I was with my buddy Richard And I had gone and stole a bottle of vodka because I was going to use it to get laid by this chick, which I'd already gotten laid by, but I was going to go
Important
get this
distinction.
alcohol. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's been so long. I don't know if I got laid afterwards on another trip or if it was that trip. But I remember going to get the liquor because we were going to do something that night. And I remember walking back on Avenue J from Ralph's, and I was walking, and there was this cop car parked perfectly behind this car that I didn't see. And so I kind of stepped back and I put the bottle down behind the tire, and they had me up and they said, "Hey man," and they looked around, they found the bottle. They're like, "Oh, you're that guy." Because I'd been stealing liquor there for like a week now. And they pretty much took me to Camp Scovey and sat there for about a week. And then my dad went to the courts and told him, like, "Hey man, this kid grew up in the system. He had taken meds back when he was a kid. You know, they used to load me up with Seroquel and Depakote, you know, and they used to call me my dad used to call me like a zombie, which is funny enough. That was my prison handle, you know, and my brand, you know, that we just made. Yeah. So where was I at? Yeah, they locked me up. And then I ended up so at 17, you know, in the middle of my sobriety, they put me in CBR, which is Colorado Boys Ranch in La Junta, Colorado, for derelicts just like me, like that were presented with an option from the court to be put there, you know. And they had therapy service and whatnot. They had vocations, but, you know, it's just a bunch of fuck ups from Philly, Washington, Cali, and a couple from Colorado. So stayed there for about a year, you know, got in fights there, AWOL'd, ran off, sold cigarettes. But I stayed sober the whole time.
The whole year?
The whole year and a half I stayed sober, man. Everybody smoking weed.
What was that program like? Like what was it?
I mean, it's like you know, it's like you know what really reminded me of is like a group home for grown-up kids, you know. It was almost like juvenile hall but just not with guards. It was like a bunch of free staff, you know. You had your units. It was a big campus. They had horses, they had vocations for like pottery, all this stuff that you could do. You had to go to school, and they had units. So they had like Alpha, Delta, and then they had another unit. So they had units for younger kids, 2 units for older kids, and then they had a lockdown unit for troubled kids. And I remember being up on the hill with the cool kids, you know. And yeah, we do all types of stuff, you know. It was bad, you know. That's when I started smoking Newports, because like all the kids up there were from Philly, from Germantown, from North Side, West, all of them, you know. And all they smoked was Newports. And you know, you get Newports and sell them for like $1 a cigarette, and then you get like Marlboros and like we had these cheap, like, I don't know if they're called Winstons or whatnot, but you get them for really cheap. And I was able to get really good with the guards and give them money, and they go and get me some cigarettes, bring it back up, and I'd sell them, you know. But I didn't sell them to make money. I just sold it to support my habit, which is pretty much going to be the moral or the theme of my story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. So what happens after the ranch, Colorado?
After the ranch, I get back, moved into Angel House, which is George's house, and a sober living right there. Get back into the program. Everybody's like, "Wow, you know, you're back." Everybody's happy, you know. Love that feeling of getting out and everybody's happy to see you. And that's when, you know, I'm at Angel House. We're doing the do, you know, and loving it. And then I ended up doing that salvia thing, and pretty much, you know, going back to the house. You know, there was a guy there, forgot his name, man, cool homeboy. He was running the houses. He had like white hair, light blue eyes, big dude. He had done a lot of time, you know. And he pretty much saw me, and he pretty much told me how to get out, you know. Gave me a drug test, and I said, I don't mind, I'll be out. And then I got out, and then what did I do? I was my ex. I ended up moving in with her over there in North Hollywood, and started smoking weed. And like for like the first couple of weeks, I go to meetings with her just to support her, but I was still getting high, you know, and I wasn't trying to stop, you know. I've always felt like, and it's a bad thought, I never say it to anybody, but like I just had 3.5 years. I'm rocking and rolling, you know. I'm gonna try this out, see what it's like for a little bit. we pretty much, and it was cool. It was manageable, like weed and alcohol. Like I know that it takes some people a long time, and I knew it would have, if that's all I had, it would have took me a long time. I would have ended up coming to the program eventually, but luckily enough, and I say luckily, it's funny, but fortuitous enough, I was with my buddy Eric. He was in this like Section 8 apartment where kids like him would get out of this program and they put him in this housing, and I was over there hanging out with him, and he had a buddy that came over, one of his roommates. So he had some these black lesbian chicks for roommates, and they were cool as hell. They loved me, and they had a friend that came in. His name was Ja, and we were playing chess, I love playing chess, and we were playing chess late at night, and he pulled out a line on the table, and he goes, "You ever done meth?" And me, of course, I say, yeah, I do that all the time,
I'm an expert,
because I didn't want to be, and my buddy Eric was looking at me like, because everybody knows me and my character, and that's probably not the best thing for me, right? Because I'm already hyper, I'm already amped up, I'm already active, and we do that. And man, I was like, this is so cool. Like, I love it. We played chess all night. We were talking. I was yapping like up a storm about all types of cool topics. And it was just off the head. And left there, went back to my ex. And, I ended up going back a couple times and saying, hey, man, you got some more of that, And, oh, can you shoot me a little bit extra for my girl? Which I wasn't gonna give her nothing, She wasn't into it anyway. She was a heroin addict, from Russia. And what's called that right there was the piece that separated me and my ex. Cause I start using, and I get like, I'm not supporting myself, I'm just like really like my lows are so low, I'm deranged, like really just like a survival of the sickest in my head. Like, and I just ended up just roaming the streets, Well, not roaming the streets. I was a part of a little tagging clique called DAR, Down Ass Riders. And, I thought I was hella cool, and, just roaming the streets, tagging, stealing, breaking into cars, all that stuff, and getting into fights and hanging out with them, and, having these spurts of sobriety just to go back. And, we broke up, and I ended up moving in with my best friend, and it was actually my best friend who actually ended up snitching on me in the end, but moving in with him. And yeah, man, you want to know the part where before I go to prison, or where are we going next?
Wherever you, dude, give it to me, bro. Yes, all right.
I know I can always go back, right?
You just told me your best friend snitched on you, so I am definitely curious how that came about. What happened there?
Well, he was my partner in crime. He would we ended up buying weed together. He had some money. He had pretty much a solid household. And he was a homebody, so it wasn't like me where I'm out and about, and he was kind of a smaller guy, but like, he had heart, in a sense. Like, we weren't, like I said, we weren't like tough guys, but, we go out and go tag and go down to LA, and I pretty much keep point while he hit up. And he was like he's a great graffiti artist, right? I think he's still doing it too, to this day. He got locked up, but to this day, but he was a great graffiti artist. And so I'd watch him, and, we go back to the house and we'd smoke a little bit of meth. But, the way I did drugs was different than him, like I wanted to keep the party going. And then it ended up, us going, well, we need money. And I said, man, we should go rob people. I remember us going out in Ventura Boulevard, trying to like pull out a knife and go rob people on the boulevard. I remember we did this one time. I did it a couple times, but I remember we did it this one time to this couple on Ventura, right between Coldwater and Woodman. And, I remember she screamed like so loud. I dipped out. I say, I'm gone. You're talking about on the boulevard. She's screaming bloody murder while we have a knife to her husband's back. And I said, man, I'm gone. I can't, I'm not doing this. It scared the hell out of me. You know what I mean? I was just like, man. And so we dipped. That was a failed run. And I said, what we need, man? We just need a gun, And so ended up, getting involved with somebody, and they hooked us up with a gun, and their whole only stipulation was don't let Dallas have it. That was it. It was like
you were already there.
My whole crew, everybody was like, well, I was at the park telling people that I'd kill people for $300 and if they let me keep the gun. And like, in my mind at that time, I thought, yeah, I could do it. I thought that was a good deal. It was, I was really just like, like you could say stupid, say dumb, whatever. Like it was just, you look back and you go, what the fuck, But I was at the park. I used to go to Macy's and I used to go steal like a ton of clothes while on the phone saying I just got my check, and then I'd take them all and I'd go through and I'd cut off the tags, and then I'd go to the park, and at Sherman Oaks Park there was a gate right by the basketball court, and I'd sit there and I'd hang up all the clothes and I'd sell them to people, and I'd pretty much be like, here man, $10-$20 for some Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, all that stuff, and so I used that money to get high. But we also were going into like CVS. They had it on the news. Actually, there was like thousands of dollars being stolen from CVS's and Rite Aids. We had a fence for Olay products. So we'd go into like Rite Aid or CVS, and we'd wear, sweats, and we'd tie them off at the bottom, and we'd go through and we'd take these Olay products and we'd just dump them down our pants, and we'd walk out, and then we'd just jump in a car and dip out, And those Olay products at the time were like worth like $30 a piece. And we take them to a guy, and we were getting like $4 or $5 for each one. And I'm sure, the homie was who knew the fence was getting a little cut off the top, But we used that money, and we'd go and buy dope, go and get liquor, and we'd pretty much, that was how, like, it was all for fun and for free for me. I wasn't doing this to be successful. I was doing this to have a good time, and to live. And we ended up doing a robbery. I had a robbery that we did on this guy that was talking shit about my partner, when it snitched on me, my best friend. And, everybody knows me, like, talk shit about me is like whatever, but I've always been so protective over the people around me. I don't know what it is. If it's just like that's how I bring value to life. I've always tried to look at it, or I just give a fuck. I don't know. You can pay it whatever you want. But there was a guy talking shit about him. I said, okay, let's go rob him. Fuck this dude, And so we got together, me and like 4 or 5 other people, and found out where he lives, and followed into his house, waited for him to get into his door. We rushed in and we held the door and we pushed through. And I remember it was funny, man. I was at the time, we're standing in the hallway waiting to go over. And I remember he was going into his house, and I almost had a second thought. I was like, and my homeboy was like, oh, it's your first time? And he fucking rushed past me. I was supposed to be the leader, because I'm always the guy amping it up, And at the time I was like, what do I do, Damn. And my homeboy fucking ran through and pushed through. It's funny. He always used to talk about making a book called Memoirs of a Baby Gangster. And I don't know if he's still alive, but that'd be funny if he did. But we rushed in there. We pretty much duct taped his face, duct taped his body, and then we just had the house to ourselves, man. I remember smashing it. I guess I smashed his head on the grass, what he told me, and he was bleeding out and busted his nose, and they had to open his mouth for him to breathe. But we went in there and we're pretty much taking bags of stuff out. And I was going to try to take the DJ stand, but I guess whoever was keeping watch said there was a cop that drove by. And I was like, who cares? Like, they're probably not even, bro, we could take this whole place and just dip out. We could just leave them there. We could just come back multiple times, But we ended up just dipping out and splitting it up. And I didn't have a fence for nothing. So, I was just there. And then after that, we ended up doing another robbery, got high, and went and robbed some people on the street right by where my dad used to live. And this is the one I eventually got busted for. Both of those were the ones I got busted for. But this one, we actually were just driving around. We needed money, so I had already planned it to do this. I told him, okay, on this day we're going out and we're getting some money. And at the time, I was actually with this chick who, she says she was in Playboy back in the day. I'm not too sure. But she was offering, and she was one of those, like, middle-aged ladies. She was pretty. Met her at Radford, and she was actually offering me to stay at her place, to drive her car. She'd give me money, which is like, it wasn't like, that wasn't like the only person that did that for me, like at that time, being young and, handsome, whatever, you know. And at the time, I kind of just like, I remember she first offered me money and I was like, I don't want your money, you know, like acting disrespected, you know, and which made her love me even more. And I remember just going, man, I don't know why I didn't take it. I always look back on it. I'd be in a stomach like, man, if I would have, because at that day I just helped her move into a spot. And I said, man, if I just became her little boy toy, you know, like I wouldn't even be here right now. But instead, I called up Corey. I said, let's do this, man. I said, we were going to do it. We're going to do it. And went over and found some kids in the parking lot, in the dark parking lot, and between some cars parked there. And we ran up. And I remember I had my bandana. I used to hold my bandana right here. I had baseball gloves, and I'd usually come up on people like this. And I remember when I ran up, we had done some meth, so I was probably doing all this weird shit, you know. And I remember running up and going, hey, man, I remember going up to run up and pull it up, and it was rolled up. And I pretty much just said, fuck it. And I robbed them without a mask. And they were all sitting there. There was like a dude, a chick, and like two dudes and a chick in the back. And I was like, hey, man, you guys are going to give us your shit. And, you know, typical Valley kids, they're like, oh, my God, like, really? Do we have to? And I'm like, I'm not going to fucking beat him or shoot him. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't my case, but I was definitely got threatened. Like, hey, man, this isn't a fucking joke, man. Give us your shit. So I took their computer, took some shit. Well, crazy thing is, they weren't just sitting there in the parking lot just to hang out. They were waiting for another guy. This other guy walks up. And so I tell the homeboy, I go, hey, Rex, hold up. And I ran up on him. And I said, hey, and luckily I didn't have my mask. So he probably, if I did have my mask, he probably would have already called the cops, right? But he had my mask. He was like, what's up, man? And I ran up. I said, hey, man, give me your shit. This is like the time when skinny jeans just started becoming popular. So I roll up and I have him right there and I'm checking his pockets, but I can't get in his pockets with my gloves because they're so fucking tight. So I turn around and I go, hey, Rex, man, shoot me the zip ties, because we had a great idea. We're gonna zip tie him, we're gonna set him down, and we're gonna take their car and we're just gonna dip. When I turn around to ask for the zip ties, he dips, wham, he runs. I start running after him. And he's fast. He kept, and so I run after him. He keep running, and I turn around, and he turn around, and he get on the phone. And I'm like, this motherfucker. So I turn around, I start chasing him again. I go, hey, motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you. And I remember Rex going, don't shoot him. And I was like, I'm not gonna shoot the motherfucker. You know what I mean? I probably wouldn't even hit him if I tried, you know. But I was just trying to threaten him to get him away. So I run him down. When I come back, Reckless is dipping. The car is backing out, skirting out, and I go, oh fuck, okay. So I run across the boulevard, south of the boulevard, and I run back into the streets. And I'm like looking for my best friend, and you know, I see his back of his car, and I'm trying to wave him down, like, hey man, I'm right here. And he didn't see me. And next thing you know, I'm coming back. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hide all this stuff. I hide it underneath the car somewhere. And I go, and I'm going behind this alleyway, and down the alleyway, I see there's a fence right here, and on this side is wide open to the next street. And I see a cop car coming this way. So while they're coming by, I kind of scooch back this way. They come down the street. I'm walking down this side of the gate, and they come past me. And so my thought is, you know, because I remember A1 from Colorado, and thinking the best spot to be is where they are. I remember sleeping right there by a police station. They're not going to look for me there. And so my thought is, they already passed through here. They're not going to come back. So I came back, doubled back, and I heard a helicopter coming. And I jumped into a dumpster. Right when I closed the top of it, a fucking spotlight comes over me. And I go, fuck, man. And so they leave. So I jump out, and there was a cool thing, like on the boulevard, there's like these, it's like not a mini mall, but like there's just a line of buildings, which are businesses. And in between it, there's a hallway that goes out to the street from the parking lot in the back. And I remember just staying in that little spot because it's just covered, you know? And I remember thinking, man, sitting there for like 30 minutes. I'm like, man, I gotta go somewhere. I gotta get a phone. I didn't have the cell phones weren't around at that time, you know? And I ran down to the hospital. Every hospital has a cop. I walk past the cop. I get on the payphone, and luckily, you know, the hospitals, they give you free call. And, you know, I called my best friend, and I said, hey man, come pick me up at the hospital. He comes, picks me up, and it was crazy. Everybody's like, shit, man. We go pick up the stuff that I had underneath the car, and I'm like, let's go out and do another one. And they're like, nah, we're good, you know? I'm like, all right, whatever. So time goes by, and I'm with my buddy that I was in sober living with, who relapsed too. And so I meet up with him. This is like maybe a week or two later. Some time passes, right? In between this, I get into a fight on a bus. I break this dude's face and he's bleeding all over the bus. I run out, go to hang out with my dad and my mom. And, I'm just kind of like lost. I found a time where at that time after that, because, the time it was like our hood holiday, so gay, bro.
What does that mean?
DAR, right? So ABCD 4, 1, and whatever R is, whatever that year is. So it aligned with the numbers of DAR. So we're all together, we're all drunk, we're all fucking high, and we're on the bus. And my friends, on the bus, there's these things that hold up the ads, and we take them down and we tag on them and throw them back up. And my friends are being obnoxious, being loud, being stupid. And there's this guy in the middle of the bus looking back at him like, "Hey, man," like just looking like giving him an ugly look. I remember going, as you can see, like I'm very protective, right? So I go, "Hey, man, who the fuck are you looking at, bro?" And he was like, "You guys, you know what I mean? What's it to you?" And I say, "Hey, man." And so I go stand over him and I say, "Hey, man, stop looking at my friend like that." And he gets up in my face and I say, "Hey, man, you better fucking sit the fuck back down." And he fucking grabs me by my neck and I pretty much knock his hand down and I just start drilling on him. And so the bus is moving. So I'm drilling him into the seat. The bus moves. It brings us back. I'm still drilling on him. And then finally I just drop him into the seat. And he's just sitting there with just blood coming out of his face. And people are screaming. And my buddies come out and they're just like, "Yeah, motherfucker." And we run. And I was so shot out. I remember running down the block and then jumping back into like some apartment buildings, just sitting there. And I remember feeling like I was going to die. There was a couple times where I thought like from all the meth I was smoking that I was going to die, just from like my heart, just like stopping, and I come to find out those are overdoses. And I had a couple of those. And after that, after that time, I was hanging out with Adam and his friend, and we were hanging out. And the day before, we were all out just like drinking and having fun. And then they pretty much kicked me the curb. They're like, "Hey, man, we're at a bar. We were hanging out. I brought some meth. We went and smoked some meth. Came back, and then they were pretty much like, "Hey, okay, so now we're gonna go home." Which is kind of like a story of my life. Hanging out with people that it gets to a point where it's just like Dallas is too much, like my homeboys, like Scooter from Van Nuys and Reckless and those guys, we're over there in Kessler and Victory and going over there, calling them up and looking over the fence and just like hitting them up. And they're telling me they're somewhere in Hollywood with their girlfriends. And, they're like, "Shh." And I'm looking at them through their fucking house, watching them lie to me, saying that they're somewhere else so that they can't hang out with me, And so now I'm with Adam. And like those are guys, these are guys that like tried, these are like fuck ups, gangsters that wanted to like do what's that thing, intervention on me, and I'm like, you guys are the same as me, bro. We're all living on the streets, we're all robbing people, we're all doing drugs, like we're all getting hemmed up by the cops, we're all getting into fights out in front of Ralph's because we're stealing shit, and it was just crazy, but as always, I was always the extra one. And so I go back to my house, and at the time I was in talks with these chicks. This chick, they're like models, and I forgot where I met them at, but we're talking. She's sending me like videos, like little sex videos, and they're saying they like me. And I was in my mind, I'm like, man, these chicks are like hot, like very hot. And they're like, "Yeah, we want to hang out," and stuff like that. And we're talking about, I got no game. So like I'm talking to them about books, because I like reading, and I said, "What's your favorite book?" And I remember them saying our favorite book was Paradise Lost by Hilton, And so I was like, "Oh, what's that book?" And I looked it up, and it's pretty much about the fall of the devil, right? About Beelzebub. And I remember I was at my house, right? And I'm looking up demons, and I'm looking up about Baal, Beelzebub. And I remember my dad came out. My dad could be pretty sensitive himself, like like a little like a man baby kind of, like he likes to be pampered, and he's with Lisa. And he comes out and he goes and I always used to say my dad saved my life. He got me out of the system. He did everything he could, just because he wasn't the best father per se, like he didn't know how to parent, doesn't mean like he just didn't do so much for me, you know. I remember him coming out, and I would have done anything for him. And he came out, and he was like, "Man, I'm sick. I think I'm gonna go to the hospital." And I was like, you know, I was like, "Come on, Dad, like you're playing, you know, like I'm not gonna go with you to the hospital." And I remember, you know, normal me would have been like, "I'll do anything, Dad. Let's go to the hospital," you know. And I remember him saying, and it's just crazy how it comes to me, like it was like in a different voice, and I was like, "I was just testing you." Now I gotta kind of backtrack because this is part of my testimony.
Mm-hmm.
The trip that I had with Adam and that guy with the bars and everything like that, and us walking, I had actually was walking up Coldwater Canyon, and we stopped at the Little Brown Church where we did the memorial. We just did the memorial for my dad and my uncle, where I used to like sleep at night when I was homeless. It was like this Little Brown Church. It's an amazing place, and they leave the doors open, and pretty much you walk in, and there's like little stalls, and there's like a cross in the front. I remember telling Adam, like, "Hey, I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna pray. You can dip out if you want to. You can come with me." I remember sitting there and praying and going, I'm just sitting there and going, "God, like, I can't get out. Like, I just can't get out of this on my own. Like, I really need help. You know, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm fucking lost. I have no hope. Like, it's all bad." And I sat there for like 20 minutes, just like praying, just, you know, a fervent prayer, just like, man, like, I really need help. And we left there, and it's like 5 in the morning, right? 5, 6 in the morning. It's the sun's just rising in the valley. I'm walking up South the Boulevard to Ventura. I make a left, and we're over there at Jerry's Deli. There's like a bowling alley spot, and sun's just rising, and there's a fucking meeting. Like, I didn't know where we were going. You know, I'm just walking aimlessly to and fro like the fucking devil in the Bible, right? And I make a left, and we go down, and I walk over, and I was going to go bird bath inside Jerry's Deli just to clean up, you know, because you know how you get a couple days run, you know. And I walk in, and there's this lady outside just standing there waiting for me. And this lady lived at the same apartment as my dad. And this lady, bro, all white hair. She had a kid, she had a couple kids, and she had these angelic eyes, like crazy eyes, like light blue, like cloudy, like crazy. And I remember walking up, and she's like, man, it's like a movie. Like, she's just standing there outside of the crowd. And I'm going, man, there's a fucking meeting here. Like, and I knew all the meetings in the valley. And I walk up, and she goes, "Dallas." She goes, "I'm glad you're here. Are you here for the meeting?" And I said, no, I'm not. I'm just here to get cleaned up. Like, and I had like the EBGBs. I was like, no, I'm just here to clean up. I'm just, you know, it's so awkward being high around people, you know, especially in the program. You know, it's like there's some people that do it, and I don't know how they do it. Like me, I'm like, oh man, it's like a vampire, you know, like all the sunlight, I'm good. And I remember walking by her, and she was like, "Well, I hope you stay," you know, looking at me with those crazy ass eyes. And I walk by, and I go in the bathroom, and I wash off, and I'm like, man, this is weird, you know. And Adam, he's on the sidewalk waiting for me. And I come back out, she's in the same spot waiting for me. And I'm walking by. She goes, "Dallas, like, we would love to have you. Like, I saved a seat for you and everything like that." And I said, no, I'm good, man. I appreciate you. And I walk out. We end up walking down. And that was when, you know, Adam's like, "All right, well, we're going to dip," right? Because I'm bringing no value to the table. And I said, okay. And then now we fast forward to where we're at with the Paradise Lost, looking up the things, and tell my dad no. And I said, man, I need to go to bed. And go to bed, I need some weed. So I called up my best friend. I said, "Hey, man, I got $20. I need a gram." And, you know, because he was also my drug dealer. And he was like, "Yeah, don't trip. I'll just put it in the barbecue stand." So he lived right down the street from me. Like, I was on Kester, and I was on Woodsett and Riverside. He was on Coldwater Riverside, like right by where I used to live when I was a kid. So I walked down, I make a left. I was going to take a small street. Well, to walk down, you got to walk down underneath the 101 freeway. And while I'm walking underneath the 101 freeway, I got this big old Gap jacket on, you know, which I used to just hide under. It made me look bigger, even though I was like $165, you know. And I'm walking under, and this car runs up, and it just stops. Mind you, at that time in my life, you know, I was always looking at the outs. I was always looking at ways out to be able to run or whatever, you know, survival instincts. And I remember thinking, man, this is it, you know. It's like someone runs up on you and says where you're from, you know. It's just like, this could be it, you know. And I turned around, and I fucking looked, and I said, "What's up, man?" You know. And out comes Adam with his buddy and 2 chicks. And I'm like, whoa. I was like, hey, man, I'm about to go get some. I think I even had, I came over and I was like, hey, what's up, man? They're like, hey, you want to go with us to the bowling alley? And I was like, hey, I got no money, man. And they're like, don't trip. I got you. And I was like, say less. So I'm in the back, right? I have this camera that I stole from this dude that beat on my mom. And I pretty much went over there while he was getting his shit packed. I stole that shit. And like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Fucking beat on my mom. And so it was a badass camera too. Like back when cameras, like it was hard to come by. And I remember we were like going through the photos, taking pictures and stuff like that. And we'd go up to Ralph's. I steal a bottle of liquor, and I'm telling him like, hey man, it was a fifth of Jack Daniels. That's all I Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, or Smirnoff vodka. Those were like, I didn't try everything else, you know. And I had a handle in my backpack. It was a big pocket I used to have. And I remember telling them like, hey, if we need weed later, we can go over. I got a gram of weed at this barbecue. But we were on Ventura. We go to that same spot where that lady told me there was a meeting, and there was a private party. I remember us parking over there, and some guy walked all the way over. We parked at the Bed Bath & Beyond, and a guy came all the way over to tell us that there was a private party. Now, mind you, the people that I robbed were over there by Corbin Bowl. So there's 3 bowling alleys that you can go to. You can go to the Jerry Deli one, you can go to Corbin, or you can go to Winnetka. Or Winnetka or Corbin, switched around, whatever. One's on the boulevard, one's all the way here in Canoga Park. And I remember we were driving, and we're like, where should we go? And in my mind, I thought, well, don't go to this one because I just robbed somebody over there. But like God did with the Pharaoh, you know, he hardened his heart. He hardened my heart, and I didn't say nothing because I thought, what can happen to me, right? Almost like an untouchable feeling.
Sure.
And so we're going over there, and I remember we parked the car, and I'm with Adam, and Adam's a big dude, mind you, you know, and we're walking down, and there's this big red truck, and all these like high school kids were right there, and one of them was looking at me, and I go, what's up, man? What the fuck you looking at, you know? And they didn't say nothing, and we walked in. And I remember we got a bowling alley, and I remember I walked around to case the joint, you know, to kind of see who was there. And I went in the arcade, and I walked by some high school kids, and I didn't think nothing of it. And came back in, and we're sitting there, and we're taking pictures of these chicks, and this guy, and one Adam, the dude that I'm with, but Adam's friend, he's like making fun, like these chicks are fat, whatever. And I'm like, well, shit, let me delete that video, you know, so they don't see it. And we're sitting there with the camera, and I feel a hand come over my shoulder, not in a way that I liked. So I was about to turn around and fucking deck this dude. And I turn around, there's this cop, and he says, don't do that. And I said, oh shit. And he says, put your hand behind your back. And they take me up, and I go, hey man, what's, because it could have been for anything, you know, I'm only giving bits and pieces, but like, you know, I go, what's this for? And he goes, oh, you're suspecting 211. I go, 211. I was like, what the fuck? Oh man. And they pulled me outside. They're trying to spotlight on me, and they go, yeah, that's the guy. Little do I know, the people that were in the parking lot were the people that I robbed. The people that I walked by in the arcade were the kids that I robbed. And I did not see them. I didn't see them. Moral of the story is, you know, I asked God for help. And this is why I tell people, you know, prayers are real. God is real. Like, he answers prayers. I've had multiple times where you know, I see it, you know, if you have eyes to see, and I see it. And, you know, I asked for help, and he gave me 2 options. He said, the program or I'm locking you up. And, went in, and then they were trying to throw like 30 years at me with 4 strikes. And I was like, what?
Wow.
I remember my buddy's mom, she was a paralegal. She told me, oh, you're going to do 5 years? I go, 5 years? Thinking that was a long time, you know? And I can't do 5 years, man. They had me in Twin Towers. I was there with the homeboy Tank because he was like, hey, let's go do Twin Towers together. Little do I know, you know, once you do Twin Towers, you can never do anything but Twin Towers. And but I ended up going to court for like about a year, going to the pirate ship, East Max, and then ended up going to Supermax because I kept getting into fights and getting into trouble. I remember my lawyer coming to see me, pulling me out the hole, and I'm all like furry and going, oh my God, I got a lawyer, you know? And he was like, yeah, man. And him trying to convince me to snitch on my friends. And I was like, bro, I ain't no fucking rat, bro. I don't know why you're wasting your time. Cause he kept bringing it up. I said, hey, no, I'm not telling my friends, you know? And but let's what else are we gonna do, to beat this, And him kept bringing it up. And my dad hired this guy with all the money he had. It was like $5,000, to get a retainer. My uncle Jeff knew this guy that worked on the case for O.G. Simpson, right? Because my uncle's pretty connected. He helped start NRG Records with Jay Baumgartner, and so like he's not like rich, but he's just connected in the music scene, and so he gets us plugged in with that for a deal, And I go to court, and this guy's standing next to me, tall, distinguished white dude. And I look up, I go, oh man, we got this. Next thing you know, I'm in county. I'm in county. I come out the hole to go see this new lawyer, and it's not that guy. It's like this fucking small little kind of dude. And I'm just like, whatever, it's a lawyer. My PD was telling me like, you're getting 15. Like we had a video call. She's like, you're getting 15. I go, I didn't do it. She's like, yeah, I bet. So you're going to get the 10-year gun enhancement. You're probably going to get 5. That's probably what's going to happen. I was like, what? I was like, no, I'm good, man. So my dad got the lawyer. And, he was telling me, he's like, hey man, well, they're going to tell on you. I go, I don't care what they do. I got to live with myself for the rest of my life. I'm not snitching on my friends. I was the reason why we were doing a lot of this shit. I was the protagonist, and I guess he told my dad that he had seen more sympathy from MA members than he did from me. It was like the one big fight that my dad had when I was in county. You get on the phones. It's hard to get on the phones, and I get on the phones, and I sat there for about 5-10 minutes of him just yelling at me. And I couldn't even defend myself. He's like, you motherfucker, I can't believe you're just in there, man. Fucking the lawyer said that you don't have no sympathy, this and that. And I wanted to, but he just kept overriding me. And I just sat there and I just took it and I just said, fuck, man. Like I'm a piece of shit, piece of shit, son, And I could tell how much it hurt him, And I ended up taking a deal. They got me with 2 strikes and they got me with 2 robberies, 2 211s, kidnapping.
Wow.
Yeah, they got me with 10-year gun enhancement and 2 2.5s. So that was the start of my prison time, which was great. I was so happy to get out of county. Like, fuck, man, being white in county is like, gosh, it's hell,
How long were you in prison in total?
About 13 years.
13 years, man.
Yeah.
And what was, I've been to county. I've never been, to prison. Like, what is the difference between the two? Obviously, I know there is a difference. Is it just programs and facilities and things like that are different, or what is it?
Politics are different. The program's different. It's not as predatory. It is, but it's not. It's more like politics inside your own car. There's a sense of security, like you have your own cell. It's like, that's your home, and, if you act right, like you're not, there's no surprises, unless you're in the hat and you get got, but, I made the mistake. I got in and I raised my hand right away. And I just, went on a whole little, run of, putting in work, they tried to get me for a stabbing. I didn't do a stabbing, but they fucking tried to get me for it. I beat that case. I had 3 batteries, pretty much like, it's just someone's in the hat, they're in trouble. You get fucking, the keys gets you and they pick somebody else and you go and beat the shit out of them until you get hit with tear gas and you just get off them, right? And ended up doing that in Ironwood, hitting every yard. I was the homeboy Fast Eddie got me a job as a Mac rep. And I was able to be a Mac rep while they were switching the yard from SNY for Active, for mainline. And that was cool. We went on a hunger strike and then did a couple more missions and then ended up, my points just went up the roof. I couldn't, you get 6 months. If you stay without trouble, they'll give you your points back, but I couldn't for that much. And they ended up putting me up on a level 4, 180.
Wow.
And so, yeah, max security.
So 13 years in prison. And how old are you when you get out?
I was about 2019. I think I was 33 years old.
Okay. So 2019. And just for anyone listening, I mean, as you were telling the story about your running and the robbing and everything, and I know that you're married and you have 2 kids now. And like, you're a dedicated father. You have 3.
Oh, man, I just had my 3rd one like 3 weeks ago.
That was your 3rd. Okay. And it's like the person that you're describing and the person that I know you are like the light years difference, right? And I was curious, how do you feel when you tell that story about little Dallas?
It's weird. It really is, man. It's so funny. I got out, man. I remember meeting Bubs, my sponsor, and like my father, you know. And I remember him telling me all the time, like, hey, there's gonna be a time when you stop talking about prison, and that's when you know things are different. Because I used to always, all I had to equate it, my life, was to prison, you know.
Right.
And now, like, I don't even try to talk about it, you know, because there's a lot of time where, like, I feel like a lot of people do it to gloat, you know, because like before I went in, I thought it was people that did time like that, man. They were cool, man. They were like the epitome of, like, the big homeboys, like that was like epic. And when I got out, I didn't want to like really push that vibe, because I truly didn't believe it. I was never like one of the homeboys, I was a nobody. I was a fucking dope fiend, and just trying to get by and trying to fit in. And so there was never any like claim to fame. Everything was for naught, all the work, all the whatever. And it was just always just chasing that next hit, chasing that next solution. But yeah, like today when I talk about it, it's just like, I don't know, man. It's like different, man. Like it's like a whole nother person. Like there's still like, I still have anger issues. I'm still sensitive, I got the disease, right? I still feel violent, you know what I mean? Like inside, but like the thought of acting on it is like totally contrary. Like it's almost impossible, right? Like obviously, since I've been out, like I've put my hands on 2 people. In sobriety, only one, and that was to defend my family, in a meeting hall, which is crazy. There's just a very just a shitty incident, guys just always acting out. He was 86 already, and I saw it coming, and he went to go try to trip my sister and my wife, and I pretty much told him to get out. He wouldn't get out, so I put his head through a window, and that's it, but like I couldn't help it, like you get in some of those situations and you just can't help put your hands on another person. But the good thing about it is today is I don't put myself in those situations,
right.
Like like Bub says, we put ourselves in positions to win, like I know that violence is the stupid man's form of communication. And, luckily enough, I'm not that guy anymore.
Yeah.
So
2019, you get out, you don't get sober right away, right? Or do you?
No, my first day out, I was at the gas station buying those little liquor things. Cause like I've always said, like alcohol is not my problem. Shooting meth is, and while I was in prison, like shooting meth and shooting heroin was like the highlight of where I was at. Right. And, when I got out, I started drinking, but like right away I got the job, cause I used to tell people before I got out, I was like, bro, like coming back is like the worst nightmare. Like, how can you get out the same way you came in? Like when I was in, I got an AA degree in business. I went and I managed programs. I managed RDAP. I went to alternative violence program. I fucking excelled, went to the advanced class on that. I did all the programs, even though they didn't give me time. I was well read in philosophy and politics and all types of things like that, self-help books, and working out, very healthy. And I used to tell people, I was like, bro, if you get out, and I only hung out with white dudes, and homies, Mexicans, and I used to tell them, like, hey man, if you get out and you're white and you're fucking, well, and you're healthy and you can't get a job, like you're just a fucking idiot. You're just a loser, and when I got out, I had a mission to prove that, I got out, I got my ID, my social security, everything right away. No excuses, I was not like the victim mentality like that, and I got in the union, got in the electrician union, and right off the bat got that job. Before that I was doing after that actually, because the EDD thing came up, and this was around the time when COVID happened, and being in the union, we're making $14.75 an hour was really rough. Thank God I was back. I got out and got back with my ex, which was like my great idea, which was like, she had a place to stay. It's the same situation as before I got locked up. You know what I mean? Like she had a place, there was some type of, there was a connection, lust, There was some type of love there, you know. I'm not gonna take it. It's like it's whatever, you know. But there was always a separation between us, you know. And we started, you know, I got into we weren't sober, you know, we were smoking weed. I had homeboys that had already gotten before me that were growing weed, so I was getting pounds for free. But I get through that, and then I'd spend my money. You know, during COVID, you know, working at Grundman factory down in like Santa Monica, they made you wear all the PPE but with the mask, and I hated it. And I remember just feeling like it was just hot. I was always feeling like job security wasn't there. And you know, a couple of homeboys were telling me about this EDD scam. And
what's
you know,
EDD?
I said, okay, unemployment, disappointment. Okay. So like during that time, a lot of people were saying they were unemployable, and like the state would give you money.
Yeah, right?
And so I did that. I quit the union. And I did that, and I got some money. I remember my ex was telling me, "Oh, you're gonna waste it all." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. We're just gonna have some fun." And I started doing like coke, everything like that, meth. I had one of my good friends up in Santa Barbara who I'd go up there with, which was, you know, my ex was an escort, or you know, the better way to call it, right? And one of her guys that she was with back in the day, she used to party with, we'd go up there. He was also professional, you know, he had a profession, and he's like one of the best at what he does. Great person, amazing person, still a friend of one of my friends to this day. But it was one of the first times I met somebody that could actually manage a life with meth. It was crazy. Wow. But I started going up there, and we smoke together, we do shrooms, and then, you know, I'd see him doing that, and I say, nah, and then I say, you know what? I have a problem with shooting meth, not sniffing meth. So I'd sniff a line, and we'd have a great night. Back like when we were doing chess, right? And it was just, we'd talk and we'd have a great time. And then the next trip up there, like after that, we'd get into a fight, me and her, and I say, I'm not doing, fuck it, whatever, you know. And then we go back up, and next thing you know, I'm smoking it. And then next thing you know, I say, you know what, whatever, man, let me shoot it, you know. And my big relapse when I got out was me and her got into a fight, and I hit up and this is before all that, but I hit up one of these guys I was in a sober living with, and I said, hey man, you know where to get some heroin? Because my problem was meth, right? So let's do some heroin. And so we went and got some heroin, but he didn't shoot it up, and we were smoking it. I remember how nasty it was, and I ended up having fun with him and going back to his little trap house. He would steal shit, give it to me, and he'd go into Starbucks, grab a copy. I'm like, yeah, you pay for that? He goes, no, they just give it away for free, because, you know, they send them out, and he just walk up and grab a coffee, you know. And I remember going, wow, man, there's like it's so new. This is like me. I'm still fresh out. So I'm learning about all this stuff, you know, like the mall's still there, but it ain't the same, you know. And I remember he was selling a bunch of stuff, and we'd go, and it was exciting, you know. It was exciting, like, wow, living on the edge again, you know. But there's in the back of my mind, like, man, I'm fucking being kind of stupid, you know. And so we go back to this trap house. We set up this projection, and I remember we went and got a rig from Rite Aid, came back, and I fucking did this cool little shot. And we were there, and I guess all that shit, I was smoking, but I was nodding out, and he kept trying to wake me up. And I said, hey, bro, like, this is how it's supposed to go. Stop messing with me, you know? And I'm nodding out, and like, I'm trying to get up, and I'm like, bro, like, leave me alone. I wake up the next morning, and I can't hear. You know how you plug your ears and you can say something, and you can still hear the vibration? I couldn't even hear that. And I'm looking at him, and I'm going, I can't hear. And he's like scrunging around, and I'm just like, hey. And you know, best idea, I go, well, fuck, man. I'm just going to go back to bed, see what happens. Because I was tired. I was so tired. I went back to the guy, woke up later that night, and we were right down the street from my ex's. And I walk over there. Thank God I got my hearing back. And I went over there, and she already knew. She's like, where the fuck have you been? I go, hey. She goes, you're fucking high. And her drug of choice was heroin. So, like, she was already mad about that. She wasn't mad about the fact that I got high. She was mad about the fact that I'm doing heroin without her or whatnot. And, you know, that started us on my journey, you know. Like, I was just getting high when I got out, and I was just fucking up. And you know, I ended up I remember bringing over like my homeboy Happy, rest in peace, he just passed away last year, and bringing over a couple other convicts to my house and trying to get them to do drugs with me, you know. That, like, I get out, you know, the scales change from, like, in prison, you spend $50, you get like a certain amount. Like, I give somebody $20 out here, and my homeboy hooked me up, and he put like a handful in my hand, and I said, whoa, what the And he was like, oh, I think I gave you a little too much. I'm like, no, you're good. I'm thinking in my head, like, damn, $20? Like back when I was a kid, man, $20 got you 0.3. Like $20 got my hand full. And I remember just like setting up shots and just taking it easy, trying to take it easy. And brought my buddy over, a stranger. And I set up the spoon and I'm pulling up I put a fat rock in there, man. I put a little bit of water, got it to where it's just like, it's not watery, you know what I mean? It's thick. I remember pulling it up. And in my mind, I'd been up for a couple of days already. So I was already getting that demented mind. And I remember going, man, this is going to be a fucking, this is going to be a fucking doozy, And I remember going, all right. And I'd set it up half into the cotton and him telling me, put it on my ankles, I'm good. I go, you're good? He's like, yeah, I'm good. And I remember I had all of it for 2 people. It's like 60 cc's, Talk to my wife now. She's like, oh, I used to do hundreds, whatever. She's always trying to outdo me. But, I didn't have much time out here. Like, it doesn't take me long, right?
Sure.
A year of meth got me in prison. Now I'm a year out, and this is where I'm at. And I remember taking that 60 cc's, and I remember I just didn't want to fucking do it, dog. But I just said, fuck it, man. And there was just something holding my fucking hand. I was going, like, I didn't want to do it, but I had to. Like, I had to. And I remember just fucking putting it in, just fucking shoving that shit in, going, whoo, fuck. Standing up and like, oh. And then going to the bathroom like I thought I had to throw up. And my homeboy going, are you okay? And I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm fucking great. And just like going, oh my God. My heart was just pounding out of my chest. And that fucking shot, bro, I don't remember what happened, but I ended up going to bed and waking up the next morning. And I got up and I had strangers gone. I had another homeboy on the couch, passed out. And I remember getting up and the house is kind of dirty. And I'm OCD. I'm super clean, man. My cell is sparkling. Like, I got wax floors. You could see yourself in the reflection of my fucking toilet. And I remember getting up and going, man, I really wanted to clean the house, but I just didn't know where to start. I just didn't know what was going on. I went to the kitchen, the sink, and I looked at the dishes and I wanted to, it's just next steps. Like, you're just doing everything in front of you, and everything that was in front of me, I just couldn't, I just didn't know how to wash dishes. And I just really didn't know who I was. And I remember thinking, I remember sitting down and going, just in a daze, going, how the fuck did I get here? Like, my family thinks I'm doing good, right? Everybody thinks I'm doing good. And I'm just in here, and my ex is in a psych ward, right? Because she's crazy, And I had to get her off of the streets. She used to work downtown LA at a needle bank, and I had to pick her up because she was trying to kill herself. And I put her in a psych ward. I think it was the second time. I forgot. But, it's fucking crazy, bro. We used to have these crazy fights. And I have the house all to myself. Got this dog. I got this cat that just died. I had to take her to the vet, driving down to the vet fucking before this. And I had to euthanize her and have the cat die in my hands. This is the same cat that we got before I got locked up. Skittles,
wow.
Which is
she
crazy.
Was old.
It's old as fuck, right? And on my way back, I got cameras set up around the house. And in my psychosis, in the cameras, I can see people and see demons having sex in the front yard and all this stuff. And I got happy with me, and I got these guns with me. I'm like, hey, we got to get back to the house. There's people at the house, robbing my house. Like, are you with me? He's like, yeah, fuck it, whatever, let's go. And we drive down, and we're running down the fucking driveway. I fucking get out the moving car with this shotgun, this little rifle that I got from somebody. And I'm running down, and there's fucking nobody there. Nobody there. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? And I'm thinking, because I had gotten into it with these fools. They were doing construction across the way, and I thought these fools were from NHB or something. These fools were going to try to rob me. And nobody was there. And I remember pulling out the camera, and I remember showing it to Happy and going, bro, you don't see that? And we're standing in front of this seat where there's these fucking people that I see. And he goes, nah, bro, those are that's pixelation. Those are the pixels. Through the pixels, I'm seeing demons. Wow. And that's when I knew I was fucking crazy. There was something, and I talked to Tyler about this. There was something in the meth in the valley at that day that was causing people to have psychosis. Because I never had this before I got locked up. And there was times where I was locked up in the we had a little shed and I'd be in there. I made it like my little house. So when we get into fights, I go to the shed, right? Because I had nowhere to go. So we get into fights, and I hold my dignity by staying in the shed. She wasn't gonna kick me out, right?
Right.
But I'd be sitting in there, and I could hear her having like a little picnic outside the shed with my dad, and thinking like, man, I'm not going out there. You know what I mean? And they're not there, you know. So mind you, so now I'm here, and I wake up, and then I sit down, and I got this phone, right? And this is crazy. Since I got out this phone, I was like, man, what the fuck? Like, you know, after 13 years, man, like no one was hooping these in the prison, right? Like you're hooping little singular cellular flip phones, right? That have like beep, 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 and it shows the number on the front. And there was nothing like this. And I got this, and I got on like social media, and I got on, you know, like everything. And I'm just like, holy shit, this thing is so cool. And so I remember going through it, opening it up and going to my calls, and finally looking at voicemails. I see a number and it says voicemails. There's a couple of voicemails. You know, who looks at that, right? Only old people leave voicemails, right? And I fucking opened up the voicemail. And mind you, I had met a guy that got me the program in Santa Clarita. And I had gone out there trying to get sober before this, you know. I met this guy who was in the union with me, and I saw him on Facebook, and he was at a meeting. And I reached out to him one time, and I said, hey, man, I'm fucked up, man, I need help. And he goes, come with me. And we went out to Santa Clarita. It was like when everything was locked down, they were having meetings outside. And at Raptors, and I remember going there, and he introduced me to everybody, and he introduced me to Bubs. And afterwards, he was like, hey, do you want to come over to Bubs' house and hang out? I was like, sure, man. And so I drove up, and I remember knocking on the door. Nobody knocks on the door. Back then, it was like you walk in, you know, doors open. So his kids come up, and they're like, who's this weirdo knocking on the door? And I was like, hey, what's up, man? Just super, you know, hyperbole of politeness, you know, which is what you get from being institutionalized. You know, everything's so respectable. And I remember just going in and you know, sitting in the backyard with all these guys and girls from the program, and just feeling like, you know, like, wow, like, and sitting back there, we're all joking around, we're telling our story, and, you know, they're just a bunch of like clean cut guys, you know, there's no convicts, no hood guys, it's just, you know, clean dudes that are all in the program, they're alcoholic, you know what I mean, drug addicts, whatever. And we're back there, and I remember telling the joke, you know, one of these guys is like worried about getting locked up. He has to go to court. And I said, I tell you what I tell all my cellies, you know, when they walk in, I said, do you want to be the mom or the dad? And he was like, I was like, what would you want to be, you know, if you were my cellie? He's like, well, I want to be the dad. And I said, well, all right, come over here and suck mommy's dick, you know? And that was just, it had everybody laughing. Everybody was laughing. And then me and Bub sat down, and we were kind of telling each other our story. And, you know, he plugged me in with this guy, JT, that actually knew me from back in the day, back in my sobriety days, as my sponsor, but I was still smoking weed, so he wouldn't do nothing with me, right? He wouldn't work with me. And so that kind of kept me back. But I look at my phone, I get on the voicemail, and, you know, it's Bubs saying, hey, man, where the fuck are you? Like, are you sober? Are you dead? Are you in prison? Like, we're worried about you. Call me. And at that time, man, it was crazy because you know, who cares? Who really? I don't really believe people that were like, oh, I care about you, I love you till you love yourself. Like, I was just like, that's kind of fake, you know. But like, there's something in his voice that really made me believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember texting him back and telling him like, hey, Bubs, like, I'm fucked off. And he goes, okay, I'm at church. Come up to my house. I want to see you. And I said, okay. And I remember sitting there, and I put the phone down, and we drove to eat. And I texted him, you know, because, you know, when I'm high and I've been out for a couple of days, like, I don't look nice. I already look intimidating, but imagine me like high. Mm-hmm. It's just not a sight, like such a burn, right? And I texted him, I said, hey, man, I really don't think you want me around your family and your kids. Like, I'm not that. He goes, I don't give a fuck about all that shit. I want your ass at my house. I said, all right, fuck it. And I don't know how I did it, man, but I drove my ass over the 5, and I drove over the hill in the Santa Clarita, and I was parked out in front of his house, and I walked in. I remember Mom was there, you know, Celine. She opened the door, and I remember just like kind of like just being awkward, just walking through the house to the backyard, and Tyler and Bubs were right there. And I just like broke down, man. I just started talking about like, fucking, I was lost. I was fucked off. Like, I don't know how I got here, but I need help. And I had to keep getting up because I kept like tearing up and getting emotional. And I was like, angry. Tears were coming down my eyes, and I had to walk to the side of the house, and I used to like wipe them off. And I was like, and I came back and talking about the demons that were following me and the people, like, and just like, I'm just like, man, I'm stuck. I'm on parole. Like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm about to go back. And I kept having to get up, and, mom's there. And I really don't remember a lot, but I remember, like, mom was kind of like emotional a little bit. She was agreeing with me that we're in a spiritual war, and Bub's kind of like, told me, he goes, I realized I messed up when I let you on JT, and God put it on my heart, and I knew I mistake. And I just want you to know, like, if you'll do everything I say for 1 year, man, I can give you everything that you want. God will give you everything you want. He goes, I see the way you look at the way we have these gatherings, and I can promise you that if you do this program, that you'll have a house, and that you'll be able to have gatherings, and that you'll have a family that loves you. And I remember sitting there going, And I remember saying I'd do anything. I'd do anything to have that. And since then, that's pretty much what I did. I fucking left there. I went back and got my ex, and got into another fight. And I ended up leaving like about a week later. And I parked in front of his house, and thank God, Tyler invited me to church, and I said yes, and I'm a man of my word. So Saturday night, I stayed there, and I was so embarrassed. I didn't want to go in and, ask for anything. I didn't want to be a burden to anybody. So I slept in my car outside of his house. And the next morning, went to church, and he was like, was that you fucking parked outside of my house last night? I said, yeah. He goes, why the fuck didn't you come in? I go, it's cool, man. Like, I didn't want to bother you. He goes, you're not bothering me. And I said, yeah, man, well, I just broke a max. He goes, well, you want to stay here? And I said, can I? Is that all right? He goes, yeah, you stay in the garage, because Tyler was there too, And they'd always try to get me to stay inside the house, but I always felt like I wanted to just be in the garage. I didn't want to be in the way. I didn't want to bother anybody. I was like, man, I'm just staying here. And I had this little couch that I could barely fit on. And I'd sleep there and go to meetings, and me and Tyler would go put Christmas lights up, and we'd come back and I'd sleep, and then I'd eat. They'd make food, and I'd wait till everybody was done. And then me and Tyler would go and I'd eat, and I'd hang out with the kids, and, I loved it. I loved being there and having a family, and getting to become close with them. And, now, they call me their brother, and I call them my family. And it's as real as anything that I've ever had in my life.
Wow. And for anyone listening, when he was mentioning Bubs, that's Ernie C, who's he'll be a guest on the show here next week. But so, man, powerful story. And I'm curious, looking back, if there's one thing you could tell, let's say 10 or 12-year-old Dallas, like looking at that kid, knowing what he's, and I'll tell you why I asked that. I remember being in rehab myself and going through, like, having them ask me, all right, make a timeline, right? And, I'm addicted by 16. I accidentally burnt my mom's house down when I was 17. Like, I'm, smoking crack. And it just occurred to me, like, that kid never had a shot at a normal life, And I'm curious, what would you tell little you? And I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but
yeah, no, you know what? I look back at my life, and I feel like everything happened for a reason. Like I believe everything made me the man I am today and put me in the place that I am today. And I truly wouldn't change nothing. It's like it's a tough question, because I love my life, and I love God, and I don't think this is the end. I think this is just a blip. This is just a testing ground, and everything that I went through paved the way for me to be who I am today, and to have a purpose to give back and to help others, and to learn how to love. And I feel like everything that I went through really gave me the tools to want to search in earnestness for that relationship with God, and to provide others with that same relationship as a medium, And like that. My story is my strength now. I'm able to connect, and I wouldn't want it any other way.
Wow. Powerful, man. Powerful. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap this up, man? That was my head rolled off my shoulders a couple times when you were telling that story, man. I know you couldn't see it, but it was happening over here. And so anything you want to close out with, man?
Nothing, man. God is good. I owe everything in my life to God. I could tell somebody, on the other side that, like I could paint a picture, man, and it wouldn't make sense because I'm not the smartest tool in the shed. There's nothing special about me, but God has truly blessed me. And it's not just with, the wife and the house and the kids and the business, it's a peace of mind. It's a purpose. It's a feeling of usefulness. And I don't have this, I don't have fear, I have a purpose, and this relationship I have with God, and it's available to everybody. And I just want to say, like, you can have this too. Whether you got a disease or a problem or just a regular old person, you know what I mean? God has something greater for you than you can ever imagine. And, it's definitely something to take serious,
Heck yeah. Dallas, thank you so much for being here, buddy. Really, really appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.
All right, we're going to close it out. Here we go.